to go back over here. Okay, there we are. Thank you, Allison. So, welcome to the show, Allison. I have Allison West on the show with me today, and it's Hard at Works, creating an impactful legacy, and that's the name of the podcast. And I like to talk to people who are making an impactful legacy, whether it's in their life or in their business. And so I'm finally get to talk to Alice, and we've been going back and forth on LinkedIn for quite some time. So now we're finally here. So
Yay.
welcome to the show, Allison.
Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome. So we had a deal where she could come on with the show and we'd celebrate her birthday, my birthday together, but didn't work out. She had jury duty to do. Can you imagine? In COVID doing jury duty, but she didn't
I
have to
know.
do it.
So
So
scary. Thank goodness. Didn't have to go in.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. So Allison, tell us a little bit how you got started doing what you're doing, um, and just wherever you want to start, just go ahead and start.
I think deep down in my heart, like I've always been a civil rights lawyer, a civil rights activist, but that never really uh, turned out the way I wanted to. And I wound up going to law school in my 30s, just not really a plan. And then wound up practicing law and then fell into employment law. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is like revving my soul a little. And
Mm-hmm.
then at the same time, it was killing my soul because you're writing briefs and you're arguing and you're not always making as much of a difference. I was on the defense side, which it's kind of funny, Marilyn, because I always thought that I could make a bigger difference on defending companies because we could say, look, you really messed up, like pay and fix it and move on, as
Right,
opposed to just suing.
right.
So, and then after doing that for a number of years, so for the last 20 years, I've had my own practice. So I really focus on the proactive end of employment law. So I'm an investigator. So I investigate harassment, discrimination.
Okay,
And now I've been doing even more on culture, just like let's see what's going on in our
right.
culture because we know there's unrest or there's been some other kinds of complaints. I coach executives that misbehave, and yes, indeed, they still are,
Yeah.
or they just need some skill building and just bringing teams together. So I do that. I do expert witness work, and I do training, a lot of training, and I'm do a lot of public speaking on employment law and HR. So that's what I do. And I think I said expert witness. So yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. You have so many great skills and talents and expertise that it's just like, how'd you get all that experience? But it comes to us, when we're out doing whatever we're doing. I tend to try different experiences, whatever I'm doing, and somebody might say, "You got a really weird background." I'm like, "Yeah, well, okay." So we all learn, right? We decide. Like when you decided to go to law school at 30, I'm sure that you had a career before that too, as well. And
Yeah,
then,
or I was kind of floundering, right? And it's funny. I am mentor to a number of women of different ages when they are like, I'm not happy doing what I want to do, or I really want to go to law school. I'm like, hey, I was 32. I became a lawyer at 36. I became
yeah,
a mother at 45. I bought my first house at 48. I'm like, you get where you get in life when you get there.
right,
And I try to really even mentor young kids. I have a 17-year-old, so I have a young guy. But I just say like you don't have to rush your life and you get your
yeah,
experiences like you said. So I feel like my
mhm,
training experience helps with my speaking experience, helps
right,
with my coaching experience, helps with
mhm,
my expert experience. So I get to weave all of them in. They're not just separate buckets, but they're
right,
actually really connected. And I mean, even today in an investigation interview, I was, what the executive had done, like
yeah,
they could have worded it better. And I'm
right,
like, I couldn't stop the trainer in me and just said, next time you might want to just say X. Right.
yeah, yeah. I imagine that you come up across some very interesting cases and people that do strange things or people that do bravo things, and I'm sure it's never a dull moment in your career and what you're doing now.
And the best part, especially with the coaching, and I love that so much. I mean, I believe in second chances.
Right.
And it's so interesting when you talk about legacy. right? I
Yeah.
love that word because it
Yeah.
can be impactful. I once was brought in to coach a billionaire. Okay,
Hmm.
so how are you going to punish this guy? Like, what are you going to do to him? Like, oh, we're going to take away your first billion and not your second. I mean, like, what
Yeah.
could you do? The threat of litigation would be painful for him. And how I approached it was, and they told me he will only give you like 30 minutes of time. And I
Right.
said, okay, well, my normal coaching back then was 4 hours for the
Right.
initial meeting.
Right.
So he gave me 90 minutes. So I at least got 3 times as much. But what I focused on was his legacy.
Right.
I said, how do you want to be remembered? Because right now, this is how people are going to remember you. And I
Right.
got to talk about Roger Ailes because he had just died at the time.
Mhm.
I said, look, he's my politics, not his politics, but he started something, that people
Mhm.
love, Fox News and stuff. But the reality is, people will remember he was a pig,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, I
Like how
heard.
he treated women and stuff.
Yeah.
So I just said, you get to decide what
Hmm.
your legacy is. And he, again, a billionaire, created major things in life. And he just said, I never looked at it that way.
Right. Right.
So you
Yeah.
try to give people gifts at times, right? Like,
Right.
look at it this way, how you can turn and fix and do things.
Yeah. Well, it's a very insightful that you were saying is like, okay, what are you going to do with a billionaire? Right. And you just said, okay, well, I'm going to approach it about how how are you behaving or how are you showing up in life? And that's your choice. And for
That's right.
some people that might hit them and say, yeah, I got to change it, or, I like it, whatever.
But
So,
typically, once you have something sort of thrown in your face,
mhm,
like bad behavior or, sort of shame,
yeah,
it's just people often want to get on the road to being successful and cared about and being empathic and decent.
yeah,
So I find when you take a mirror, not literally, but I tell them, I'm the mirror and I'm
yeah,
going to help you see how others see you.
right,
And sometimes, look, if people are very successful, because I don't coach people who aren't successful, because you would fire those people, right?
right,
You engage in bad behavior, you're a terrible performer.
yeah,
We're not going to call Allison, we're just going to leave.
yeah,
But when you get to say, look, you're creating liability and your reputation, right? You got to go for the ego sometimes.
right. Right, right, right. So, what are your specialty, Allison? I know we talked a little bit about, what you love to do, coaching people. So, what else do you do that you love to do?
So, just for the work part, I mean, I do love to train, and it's
Yeah,
like a broken heart every day that I don't get to be live and in person. So, I've adapted to doing Zoom.
yeah,
And here's the thing. So, about 15 years ago, I stopped using PowerPoint in my trainings.
right.
So, I do discussion based storytelling kinds of
Mhm.
trainings, and or my style is.
Yeah,
And it's very different, and that's how you can impact culture. That's how you can get people to like stop and listen and go, oh, okay, like I didn't know about that. When I talk about cases, and I'm required under our harassment laws to talk
right.
about the law, I don't just go, let's talk about what the Second Circuit said. I said,
Yeah,
let me tell you about Marilyn and what happened to her at this company. And people are
right.
like, really? It's just a case. I don't
Yeah,
know Marilyn, but I
yeah,
talk as though
yeah,
Marilyn and I are best friends.
right.
So everything that I do, what I like to do is to try to have some kind of teachable moment that people
Right.
can, walk away from. So the training is really a
Mhm.
great passion of mine as well.
Right. Yeah.
I
Awesome.
miss it.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. So, are you doing a lot of Zoom things, I guess, right now? Yeah.
Yeah, because the investigation. So
Yeah.
I'm doing some days it's like 2 to 3 hours Zoom sessions doing interviews. But, I've spent a lot of time I did starting like in April through the summer, training HR and other professionals how to effectively do remote interviews. Now, many of us have done,
Mhm.
Skype and other, but it's
Right.
it's different. We're in a
Right.
pandemic.
Right.
It's a different way of looking at things. And I've been talking about how there's almost a little bit more of an intimacy
Mhm.
now. Like for some reason, Skype, the connection wasn't always so clear. It just something seemed different. But now we're using webcams. And, if I'm talking to someone about the pain that they
Mhm.
perceive, what they've been through, like, and I'm just staring at their face, right? It's just a pretty intense connections sometimes. So
Yeah.
that's been really, interesting, teaching people like we were talking, get a microphone,
Yeah.
right? Like get things to, make the experience better
Yeah.
for folks. But yes, a lot of Zoom. I just got an invite today for Blue Jeans. I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to learn whatever Blue Jeans does. So it's been a number of years.
Yeah.
So yeah, learning all the different, platforms that are the best and stuff.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
the goal is to still do the teachable moment. So now I'm up to having, I think, 4 PowerPoint slides, just because you need a little
Yeah.
visual aid. But you learn to use the breakout rooms and polling and try to be provocative and creative as well.
Right. 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 So can you tell me what are the biggest challenges that you of clients that you're working with right now, what they have?
I think for a number of my clients, what's so interesting is that, people, managers
Mhm.
who were eh managers before, mediocre managers, guess what's happening during the pandemic? They're really crappy managers. And so it's not like they got better
Yeah.
working from home. And so I have a number of clients. Like I said, I'm doing culture
Mhm.
investigations. There's been some allegations of, just toxicity in the workplace and stuff, but also trying to figure out like where the gaps are. What do people need to be able to get their job done? How are they approaching things? So I'm really seeing the challenge of how do you manage effectively remotely? I
Mhm.
talked to someone. I said, "How often are you checking in?" He
Yeah.
goes, "Like once a month." Oh my god! I'm like, "All right, once a month." I said, "Look, it's not good, but you could talk to your mother once a month. You need to talk to your employees a little bit more than that. Like you
Yeah.
have to even just connect and say, Marilyn, we're just having a 3-minute Zoom call, checking in, check
Yeah.
your pulse, make sure you're alive.
Yeah.
What do you need? Is there one thing that I could do to help you today? Right? Like
Yeah.
that human
Caring.
connection,
Yeah.
the caring,
Yeah.
and it's so important. But one of my longtime clients just reached out and said, look, we're just seeing a lot of performance issues with our managers. And
Right.
let's talk about managing within the law training,
Right.
coaching, documentation, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's something that is not uncommon.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, you would think that because we're doing more long distance, more Zoom stuff and web stuff or phone stuff, that we would be checking in more often, right? I would think that you would be checking in more often.
I
So,
think people just, for a lot of people, this is awkward.
mhm.
Like for me to have that I'm listening and looking at you, I have to look into my camera, which is up there, and your
Right.
face is like right down there.
Yeah.
So it's these ways to connect. So, I've been teaching managers and others like, verbalize more. Hey, when you see my eyes go down, it's because I need to connect with you, right? You're
Yeah.
connecting with me when I look at you. When I
Right.
look down over here, I'm not checking my bank account. I'm looking at my note, right? Like I'm taking
Yeah.
notes. So you try to help
Yeah.
people, understand. And I think the real problem comes down, to be quite frank, is people think like I have to like log in and meet someone for a half hour. Like I have to, and I'm like, teachable moment, like a moment. Like you could say, look, let's just meet for a 5-minute quick check-in. And you can actually accomplish a few things in 5 minutes. I always tell people, go put on your microwave oven,
Yeah.
set the timer for 5 minutes. You can stack and unstack a dishwasher. You can make a couple of sandwiches, right?
Yeah.
So you could talk about one or two,
Yeah.
higher surface things to check in, or a
Mhm.
10-minute. I'm not saying just
Yeah.
5, but you could do shorter things that it doesn't take up a whole hour. And I really want to impress upon people to think about a short check-in because it could be very meaningful for
Mhm.
someone.
Mhm. Especially if you got staff who are feeling um, discounted or dissed because their boss or their manager isn't talking with them. Like I was reporting to this gal, and I finally called her my dead zone, And she was a person that would schedule and do all the stuff that I was working with her. And I finally just said to her, she finally reached out a branch and said, can we have a call to get to know each other? And I think, you know what? It's a little too late for that now, because now I moved on and got, other jobs or other work going. And, I just said to her, here's my problem. I have 20 emails I have sent you, 5 phone calls I've called you, and you've never returned them. And now you want to put a little olive branch out to me. And I'm going, well, I appreciate your effort, but it's too late.
Right.
And it's not to say that, and I am hoping that maybe that she would learn from that and just say, okay, I gotta reach out more often to people. And I'm not talking about going to Facebook and,
Oh,
doing a
no.
broadcast. We're talking about one-on-one, right?
Yeah, that's right. The
Or pick up the
substantive.
phone. Yeah.
That's right. But again, I mean, I've had executives roll their eyes like, oh my God, do you, like, I am the chief financial officer of a major corporation. You think I literally have time to check in with people? And I was like, that would be yes.
Yeah.
And do short check-ins, right? And it doesn't have to be every day, but we also don't know now what's going behind the scenes, right? Like
Right.
I have my makeup on, I look all happy, but a few months ago, my son is a senior, it was a senior in high school.
Right.
So we had a lot of sadness in our house because
Right.
my son missed out on his prom,
Yeah.
senior ditch day, yearbook signing,
Yeah.
graduation. So not like we were, thank goodness, no health issues,
Yeah.
but there was sadness
Yeah.
because he he handled it pretty well, but he was sad
Yeah.
as well. And so we don't know what goes on for people behind the
Yeah.
closed doors or behind the screens.
Yeah.
And it is that empathy
Yeah.
that is so critical, right? That
Mhm.
how we listen to people, listen. I always tell people, listen to what's not being said.
Right.
Like it's such an important thing, like, oh yeah, everything's great, but they actually didn't answer the question, which is what's one thing I could do to help you, right?
Right.
And, or, when you dig a little deeper.
You're right, right, right. So what do you think of some good ideas that, like you already mentioned, just really listening to the other person, listen to what's not being said? Is there anything else that when people are struggling to reach out and contact each other or have a conversation, do you have any other ideas that people can do?
Yeah, one of the things that I talk about a lot to my coaching clients, and I've sort of been alluding to it, is if I just said to you, Marilyn, certainly let me know if you need anything. So the
Right,
chances of you asking me for something are slim to none because you're going to be like, never mind, I don't want to have it dinged against me. I'll just do it myself, right?
right,
But I say, if you can, and if I just said, what do you need from me? And you'd be like, oh my gosh, there's so many things I don't know. And I equate it to when I had foot surgery last year.
right,
My friends would call, and it was my right foot, so I couldn't drive. They're like, what do you need? I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I need a little from Costco. I need a little from Safeway. I need a little from Trader Joe's.
yeah,
And I would almost invariably say, never mind, it's fine. I'm good.
yeah,
But when they called and said, I'm going to Trader Joe's, I'm like, could you pick me up
yeah,
my pita crackers from there?
yeah,
So I think what we can do for each other is to say, what's one thing I could do to help you be successful now? Like,
right,
what one thing I should stop
yeah,
doing,
yeah,
right? To be
yeah,
able to say to a manager, what's one thing I should stop? And the manager's like, what? And you say to the manager, if you could stop calling me every 20 minutes to see if I got the project done, right? I mean, it allows it
yeah,
allows communication. If you
mm,
could say, what's one thing I should start doing? Well,
right,
it's always really helpful, Marilyn, after you meet with the boss and you
mm-hmm,
come back and give me a summary so I kind of have an idea of what's coming down the pike. You
mm-hmm,
might be thinking, well, that's easy,
yeah,
and you're like, should we plan a half hour? I'm like, if you could give me 5 minutes of just like a quick snapshot, and you're like, even easier.
yeah,
So it's these little asks, and stop with the bit. Well, I always ask what they need, but it's too big a question.
yeah,
So that is one of my biggest tips for people is just give smaller bite-sized things. What's one thing doesn't mean you're limiting
right,
it to one, but like,
yeah,
because it's much easier to say one thing than, oh gosh, like I need some more supplies. I need this, I need
yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. And especially with you're working at home, like you were saying, it's so much easier just to say, "Oh, never mind, I'll do it myself."
That's right. So you want to empower people to say, like, look, you're on your island of your home,
Yeah.
but we're all in this together, and we need to be able to communicate and, reach out. It's that empathy, right?
Mhm.
And it's, just acknowledging things. I think if we also pay attention a little more, like if you and I are talking, Allison, and I lean back, I go like this, I could be very relaxed, or it's like bored,
Yeah.
or I'm just losing it. Like, we need to just say, like, we've been talking for about 2 hours. Is that too much? Like, let's end it. Like, even my investigation interviews,
Yeah.
I will block 2 hours. And even if they have more to say, I'm like, why don't we take a break? Why don't we reschedule? Like, it's very hard to sit.
Yeah.
So I think it's being mindful
Hmm.
in other kinds of ways as
Right.
well.
Hmm. Hmm. And so some of the other things, issues that have come up for you, and your clients, is there anything else that people can think about or make an action plan for, or they need to consider? Uh,
Well, I mean,
Mentors,
there's certainly an increase in investigations because
right?
there's an increase in complaints.
Right.
Look, notice is the most important word any employment lawyer will ever tell you. What puts the company on notice? Like,
Yeah.
and so we look at little things. So don't ignore the little things because they're going to become big things.
Right.
And, when people are like, oh, don't tell anyone, you got to tell somebody. So
Right.
it's that whole keeping the secret. So I
Yeah.
think I've seen, like, there's just lately been a big, huge increase in complaints,
Right.
and you have to do the right thing as an employer. So the challenge of how do you balance your finances with hiring an investigator or having an internal person do it, the disruption. Look,
Yeah.
people are still gossiping, even
Yeah.
though they're like doing it on Slack, instead of being at the water cooler.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. I think the other thing I would mention is please don't give up on training. And while most people aren't doing live training, people still want to grow during this time period. They want, do lunch and learns, do something to
Right.
keep that skill set going. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be so intense that you're doing a 7 hour managing within the law. Break it up to have like a 2 hour every few weeks,
Mhm.
to make it engaging, not just PowerPoint. So I think if companies could really, and the people that watch this, and I don't mean it to be self-serving
Yeah.
because I'm a trainer, but
Yeah.
there's
Of
online,
course.
there's stuff, but keep the learning
Yeah.
going.
Point. Yeah.
And I think people need that, and that's what I've been hearing as well. And also because I've just had this big uptick in trainings. Like, it was quiet for a month, and then people are like, I think as we get into the fall, people are eager.
Right. Yeah, they're realizing that they need something more to help them stay motivated or to do
That's
the job
right.
better, or whatever it is that they're noticing. Oh, I'm missing this. Oh, like it's when we change our eating patterns or foods, we notice things. So it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's like our brain is, this muscle,
Hmm.
right? That needs it. We sit more than we have been, right? Like I walked the dog right before this, but it's important to just keep our brains going,
Right.
and not just with the work. And I think the other thing is just if you can have little social things, right? Just do a little Zoom fun party, come up with a theme,
Yeah.
just something that's different to connect people.
Hmm.
Uh, Everybody gets a number and you got to learn about that person in a breakout room. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some fun things you can
Right.
do as well. So
Right. Yeah.
I think,
Yes.
I think that's part of it. And it starts at the top. Leaders have to stay in touch too. Send a little message
Yeah.
every so often. If you're the CEO, checking in. This is the fun thing I did. Write to this email and tell us what else you did that's fun if you're comfortable sharing. So I
Yeah.
think thinking about culture, even though we're not together.
Right. Right. And so, who are your best clients you like to work with, Allison?
Uh, I like clients that typically are just in tune with their workforce.
Hmm.
There's times, I think of a cold call I got a couple of years ago. It was an HR person talking to me about my training. And she said, our managers, and I'm going to use the word because it's just
Yeah.
because they're a bunch of retards. And I was like, I said, excuse me, like that's so incredibly offensive coming
Yeah.
from HR. She goes, oh, you know, I'm just talking to you. I'm just joking around. And I thought, probably not. You're probably not.
Yeah.
So my clients who are in tune, they're open to listening to other ways to approach different problems, how to bring people together.
Right.
Those are my favorite clients. And I feel very fortunate. I have a lot of longtime clients and we become partners,
Right.
and that becomes very special.
Yeah. I think partnerships and collaborative people that work with you is invaluable because you get to learn from each other, and
Yes.
and plus you're still supporting each other in some aspect.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, I always want to get to know my clients. So if
Mhm.
I have someone who's just like, you know, we only have 20 minutes, let's talk about, you know, 10 minutes on our culture and the rest on our other business, that's a little more frustrating for me because I want you to tell me, like, what issues have there been? I've had clients, I'm like, have you had any complaints, claims? And it's not that I need names and
Yeah.
numbers,
Yeah.
but I just say, you know, let me know because people are going to ask for my legal opinion during the training. It's like standard. Like, I have a friend at another company, and I'm like, is that you? Right. Like, so, um, and one time it happened, like there were a lot of age related questions, which is not always the most common. And I said to the client after, hey, I think the training went really well, but what about those age claims? She's like, how did you know? I'm like, because people kept asking about it, and I will never lie about the law, but I
Right.
could have, like, you know, just been prepared a little differently. So
Right.
it's that candor and
Mhm.
being able to say, look, we have issues and this is what we need to work on. So I love that in a client.
Right. Right. Okay. So how can people get a hold of you, Allison? Besides the podcast and whatever, but how do if they want to work with you, how do they find you?
Yeah, I have a website, employmentpractices.net. So you can reach me that way. I'm on LinkedIn, so my name.
Yeah.
And so quite often people will reach out that way. I put out these little videos that I started. I have a video series called Teachable Moments, 3 lessons in 3 minutes. So I've been posting those on, uh, I've just done 2 so far, but I've done that on YouTube and I put that on LinkedIn as well. And you can see my appearance on CBS This Morning and some other things. So I'm
Yeah.
you know, I'm out there.
Right.
So
Right. You're getting yourself out there. Yeah. I've been watching I watched your teachable moments, and I find them very helpful. Not so much that I'm in that space, but it's always nice to learn more about something and you can pass it along to somebody else. Hey, I just watched this great teachable moment. Do you guys have those issues at work? Or if not, then they can, you know, redirect them to you. So I think that's because we all learn from each other and we're all here to support each other too, right? Otherwise,
always. Hmm.
what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even the people that I coach, like there's always something I walk away with learning, like the way they interpreted something, their insight into something, their aha moment, like, uh-oh, I have done something wrong. There's always something, and that's the joy.
Right,
That's the joy.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've enjoyed our conversation,
Oh,
Alice.
thanks.
Thank you
I'm
so much
so
for
happy to have
sharing
been
so
here.
much
Thank
today.
you.
I'm outside, so it's a beautiful night and the sun's just about to go down, but it's still beautiful out just the same. And I am sure it is where you are too. So thank
Exactly.
you for joining me today. And we'll be chatting with you very soon. And I hope that we could do this again another time
I'd
and,
love it. Thanks so much. You have
and
a
have
great
another
evening.
teachable moment.
Exactly. Many, many more.
Many more.
That's
Okay, great.
right. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Al.
much. All righty. Take good
You're
care.
so welcome. Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Bye bye. And for everybody else that knows Marylyn, it's all about being kind to yourself and kind to others. So take care of each other because that's